Here is the best Google ad structure for e-commerce in 2025. Now, how Google differs from Meta is that there isn't just one structure that fits all. We can't just make a video that says, hey, if you're at this spend, do this. If you're at this spend, do this. And if you're at this spend, do this. Instead, you need to understand the fundamentals that exist within Google Ads that apply across everyone watching this video. And then you can reason effectively from these principles to build your own structure. Now, I'm still going to give you the structure. I'm still going to tell you what to run. But just know that there's way more flexibility within Google as you go from brand to brand, dependent on the specifics of your business. Fundamental number one is that Google Shopping outperforms everything. And so even though you might see a search campaign or a YouTube campaign or a demand gen campaign that has a higher return on ad spend, fundamentally, it probably doesn't. Google Shopping will always outperform everything else. And the reason for this is that you get so much more information prior to the click on a Google Shopping ad comparative to anything else. And so Google Shopping ends up driving the highest conversion rates, despite your average CPCs being the exact same. And so you always want to be looking to prioritize as much spend as possible through Google Shopping before you saturate the platform, and obviously incremental CPAs go above what you're after. Number two is that consolidation always beats segmentation if we're just looking at an account-wide return on ad spend number. If you consolidate down, you will always get a better return on ad spend number than when you segment. And the simple reason for that is that data is accumulated at the campaign level. It is shared cross-account, but a very small amount of it. And so what you're effectively doing anytime you split campaigns up, and let's say you have 5 PMAXs instead of just 1, is you're also segmenting your data. You're creating effectively 5 different machine learning models that are all trying to figure out your target demographic in isolation. When you go and take those campaigns and you combine them, and you now have 1,000 monthly conversions in just that one single campaign, the modeling on the psychographic data points of the end consumers is considerably better, and so you get better performance. Now, that is not to say that you shouldn't segment, and we'll go into that in a moment, but it is to say that you really want to think about this fundamental anytime you're building up an account. Then number 3, Google is an over-attribution machine. It does a fantastic job at attributing as much revenue and conversions as possible to it. And so you need to be cognizant of this when you're setting up campaign structures, when you're deciding how you should potentially be segmenting out brand from cold, and then what the implications still are when we're looking at cold targeting. So they're really the 3 fundamentals that you should be thinking about when structuring the account. Now, how does this actually tie into the account structure? Number 1, we want to prioritize spend through Google Shopping. And there's obviously 2 ways to do this. We either launch a performance max campaign, we could launch a feed-only performance max campaign, or we could simply launch shopping campaigns. Now, it really comes down to clarity over attribution in conjunction with what actually performs best in the account. And so there once again is no one size fits all. It's going to be nuanced dependent on your particular business. Now, commonalities is that Performance Max will often outperform Google Shopping if you have a long purchase window or you're high ticket. And the reason for this is that Performance Max has built-in retargeting across all Google channels. And so if your average time to purchase is, let's say, 7 to 10 days, you're going to get the initial click on cold, and then you need to follow up with those users in some capacity. Now, you're likely going to have a high budget on Facebook that's going to retarget them. But then if you can also be following up with them across the Gmail placements, across the display placements, across further searches on search ads and Google Shopping ads, because PMAX will then go and crank the bid, knowing that they're in the funnel, and make sure that you actually get that placement, then Performance Max ends up generally performing better. Now, vice versa, if you have a really short time to purchase, we have brands that have a time to purchase of 6 to 12 hours because they're just really impulsive, low ticket items, then Performance Max isn't really needed. In fact, Performance Max is probably going to go and accidentally overspend on trying to reserve to these users, even though if they haven't bought within 6 to 12 hours, their purchase is probably dead and we probably can't revive it. But PMAX doesn't necessarily know that, and it's going to continue to go and overspend. And so you might actually want to go and prioritize Google Shopping. Now, the other large downside of Performance Max that we've said in tons of our content, other people say it as well, is that the actual clarity over data here starts to become obfuscated. It becomes unclear what the actual impact is when we look at a Performance Max campaign and we see a 5 ROAS. Can we actually trust that that entire 5x return was due to us running this campaign, or would half of it come anyway, even if we turned it off? Or would 80% of it have come anyway, even if we turned it off? It's really unclear to be able to understand that unless you run proper geo holdout experiments, which you can do within Google, or you do some difference approach. And so you don't have PMAX, then you introduce it, or you take out PMAX entirely for 2 weeks and you try to discern the discrepancy in revenue change over that particular period. The reality is most people don't want to turn an entire campaign type on and off just to see whether it's working or not, and then try to sift through the data and start to introduce data science. And so that starts to become less applicable for most brands. And so really the recommendation that we have is, let's say you sit somewhere in the middle. You're not super high ticket, long conversion window, but you're not super low ticket and short conversion window. We would recommend having both. We would recommend having a Performance Max campaign and applying a theoretical 30 to 40% discount on whatever you're seeing in attribution. Now, this is even including when you put brand exclusions on this campaign. And we always recommend running PMAX with brand exclusions if the objective here is cold customer acquisition. And so this is going to have a brand exclusion, and we're still not going to take the return on ad spend for its word. If it says a 5, we're going to pull that by 30%, which I think would equate to about like a 3.8. In conjunction, we're also going to have a standard shopping campaign. And the idea here is that we can trust a standard shopping campaign attributed figure much more than we can trust Performance Max. And there's 2 reasons. Number 1, we get better clarity into search term data. Number 2, we can set up audience segments, and we can decrease the bid on any existing website visitor or any existing customer. And so we can really make sure that standard shopping is not placing on anyone that currently exists within the funnel. And we'd obviously also put a brand exclusion in here, but you can also put audience exclusions in. Then in conjunction to that, you're really set for most brands. Now you could think about, oh, well, can we throw in demand gen? Can we throw in YouTube? Why don't we throw in cold search? Reality is none of these channels will outperform these 2 campaigns until you're spending at least $50,000 a month. And then you're going to get to the point where cold search makes sense as the next step. This is probably still going to drive a lower ROI than Meta being done well. Now, it's still an opportunity as an additional channel, but it's just worth noting that I have very rarely ever seen cold search do unbelievably well for most e-commerce brands at scale. Now, yes, I've seen tons of ad accounts. In fact, we have tons of ad accounts under management that are spending $100 a day on cold search and are very profitable. But when you really try to crank cold search up to spending thousands, tens of thousands a day on an e-commerce brand, they just don't scale that well. Now, in lead gen, it's different. We have managed lead generation accounts spending $500,000 a month on search alone. Okay, so it becomes a little bit of a different story in terms of the way that the consumers purchase. But on cold search, you will be very, very limited here. On YouTube also I have seen work fantastically well at scale. There are 2 issues with YouTube. Number 1, measurement is bad in platform. It will always say that YouTube's doing bad when it might actually be providing a halo effect and significantly improving the total MER of the business. And so you need strong measurement systems in place, usually in the form of some kind of geo holdout experiment. That's really only possible once you're at 8 figures and above. And so YouTube only makes sense if you're at scale. That can obviously be layered in. It's a completely different strategy. It's almost a completely different platform when you look at how you approach it and the creative demands. You need to start rotating creative quickly with velocity like you do with Meta, except you want to do it in a holdout fashion so that you can actually prove its incrementality. The other issue with YouTube, issue number 2, is that you need a lot of spend. I've just never seen YouTube campaigns perform well at sub $400 a day. You need to come in with very large budgets so that YouTube can actually figure out who to target effectively and then start to prioritize those users. And then demand gen, we have a video out about 3 or 4 weeks ago going through our experience so far with demand gen. So far, demand gen just significantly over attributes and has really no positive impact on new customer acquisition. This will probably change over time. If you're watching this video, check when I actually published it. If it was a year ago, we might have a different stance because they constantly tweak the algorithms and they're trying to make the products better. But as it stands of August 2025, demand gen doesn't seem to be a very effective product to roll out across 90% plus of ad accounts. So what else do you run here? Well, this is the acquisition portion of the account, and we'll delineate these campaigns a little bit more in a moment. Then you want to have effectively your retention or your brand protection. That's where you have a branded search campaign and you have a branded shopping campaign. Now, I would argue the branded shopping campaign is actually more important than the brand search. In fact, I think that most people watching this don't even need to run a brand search. The reason being is that most people have no one bidding on their branded key term. And this is the case whether you're a 7-figure brand or whether you're a 9-figure brand. Almost every single 9-figure brand that I have audited, there has been no one bidding on their branded key term. Same thing applies for multiple $50, $60 million brands that we either work with or have audited. No one bids on their brand. And yet, because they're so big, they have 100,000 searches a month, 200,000 searches a month for their brand, and they're going and spending $30, $40, $50,000 defending it off nowhere. There's no point. You may as well just cut it. Branded shopping, on the other case, I think this is really important to defend because if you don't run branded shopping, and this will happen if you have hard brand exclusions on these cold customer acquisition campaigns, then your competitors go and place above your organic branded listing. And that can be really damaging if people aren't very high intent going to buy with you. And you have competitors sliding in with very good promotions or almost identical products, etc. You're going to lose the click if your competitors have very convincing shopping ads placed above your own organic branded listing. And so making sure you have placements here is critical. You want to be doing this through the use of a custom script. We built one. It's on the YouTube channel. We posted it about 1.5 years ago. You could just Google for branded shopping script BlueSense into YouTube and you'll be able to run this campaign here. Now, where the campaign structure starts to break out and become more nuanced is based on your brand's goals and focus. So as mentioned earlier, consolidation will always outperform segmentation. But if you open up really any of our 8 and 9-figure Google ad accounts that we run, what you will find is that we are not just running 2 campaigns. There's probably 4, there might be 6, there might be 10. Now, why is that the case when consolidation will always be segmentation? The reason being is that even though you could get a better ROAS just pulling everything into one specific campaign, it often doesn't meet the actual objectives of the business. For example, gross margins on most brands with a large product portfolio will change considerably product to product and collection to collection. You might have one collection that's operating at a 50% gross margin and another at a 65%. Doesn't seem that big, but it is a huge difference in terms of how many actual, how much spend you should be allocating across those products, as well as what your target efficiency should be. On one, you break even at a 2 ROAS. On the other, you break even at a 1.6. Very, very different. And if they're all blended into the one campaign and they're running the same bidding strategy, you're not going to get effective distribution of budgets across those products. Yes, you might have a higher ROAS, but when we actually go and calculate the profit dollar amount generated, it will be worse than if you segmented and you had different objectives across both. Number 2 is product priorities. It might be the case that you have a specific line that you actually want prioritized more. That might be because of different MOQs. It might be because of the fact that you don't think these particular products are going to be in fashion for much longer, so you want to move them quickly. It might be the case that they are in fashion right now, so you really want to push them in front of people, and the competitors would be bidding more aggressively on that kind of collection or that kind of product. However, if you're consolidated into just one campaign, one PMAX, one standard shopping, you have no ability to tell the campaign, hey, this product, prioritize it, or hey, this collection, put more spend there. It's just going to distribute spend based on whatever the objective of the campaign is, whether that's maximizing for value, maximizing for a specific ROAS number, or just maximizing across a CPA or conversion target. Number 3, and this starts to get a lot more nuanced, and this is a analysis that we do on every brand that we onboard. Now, this ends up only applying in about 10% of the brands that we onboard, because generally speaking, across most people watching this, lifetime value post-entry purchase doesn't really fluctuate that much. But for some brands, it fluctuates massively. And so this becomes a massive unlock within the Google Ad account, which is, what is the customer lifetime value of the product or the collection in first purchase? And so this is what's called an entry analysis. And so you're looking at the entry point in which a customer enters the business, and then looking at what is the lifetime value off the back of that entry point. Really easy example is you might be selling pants and coats. And those that come and buy coats come back and repeat buy at 10%. But those that buy pants come back and repeat buy at 19%. And when you look at the actual dollar value, LTV, over 1 year, it might be 60% higher for those that buy pants. Now, what is the reason? Well, it might be the case that the pant quality is considerably higher than coats. People like the pants. Maybe they're the best pants they've ever bought. They're the best jeans they've ever bought, in which case they actually go back and end up buying a second pair and then a third pair. Whereas with the coats, there's less repeat purchasability there. Maybe it's slightly higher ticket. Maybe there's just less diversity within cross-sell ability of different coats, and so people don't come back and buy as much. And so because of that, what that ends up meaning is that we can actually go more aggressive on acquisition for the jeans collection, because we know that we're going to get way higher repeat rates and make way more money within the next 365 days. And then vice versa, we have uncovered products and categories that have close to a 2 to 3% repeat rate off the back of them, which is terrible. So practically, we need to make all of our profit on first purchase, or these customers are never profitable. You go into the Google account, you look at those specific products, those specific collections, you break it out, and you go, wow, we're making $1 on first purchase here. And these people never come back and buy again. And so we shouldn't even be spending on these at all, or we should be segmenting this out and have a much higher efficiency target. Because unless we're operating at a much higher efficiency, we should not be spending on these products. Now, we can go on and on here, but you need to start breaking down what are the actual goals and objectives of this specific business. You really need to understand all the nuances, and that's why we will actually never provide a detailed account structure recommendation of Google Ads in an audit. And the reason being is that I don't know the gross margin portfolio across the whole brand. Most people don't have this accurately tagged up in Shopify. I don't know what the product priorities are. I don't know what you're prioritizing, and I don't currently, within an audit phase, understand the target demographic as well as I should to be able to make this kind of call. I also have no idea what the CLTV is off the back of product first purchase, because this is a 2 to 3 hour analysis that we simply can't do upfront in conjunction to all of the existing work that we do within the audit. It's just too time intensive to do for free. And so all of this information needs to be gathered before you then go and take this structure and segment it out in more detail.